This is the B1C on P1 higher past paper 6 run through. As ever, you've got the equations in front of your booklet. Make sure you're using those and referring to them when you get to the physics section in particular. First, the biology section. Look at the picture of Assad. He is 5 years old and lives in Africa. Assad suffers from marasmus, a disorder caused by starvation. His muscles are wasted. This is because his muscle protein is being used as an energy source due to the lack of food. What molecules are proteins made of? So your first mark there is amino acids. And then the estimated average daily requirement, EAR, for protein can be calculated using this formula. There it is. Assad has a body mass of 12 kilograms. Use a formula to calculate Assad's EAR for protein. So that's simply 0.6 times by 12. Just use the formula, plug in the number. So that is 7.2. Then the usual EAR for protein for a 5-year-old boy is 11 grams a day. The usual EAR for protein for a 15-year-old boy is 34 grams a day. Explain why the EARs are not the same. So first Mark was saying the 15-year-old's body mass is larger, so he's heavier, or he's bigger, and you could also get that first mark saying that he's had growth spurts, or he's in puberty, and then the second mark is just saying that the EAR is calculated using body mass and not age. But if you didn't use the word mass, you could use the word weight. You wouldn't get you wouldn't lose the mark for that. Beta thalassemia is caused by a recessive allele. Assad's sister has beta thalassemia, but Assad does not. His parents do not have beta thalassemia. Assad's mother is pregnant. What is the probability of this child having beta thalassemia? Draw a genetic diagram to explain your answer. So, this disease here is not really important. The important thing is the idea that it's caused by a recessive allele and his parents do not have the disease. So you have to draw one of these tables. The fact is caused by a recessive allele and his parents don't have the disease must mean they have a dominant and recessive each. And then if you complete the diagram, you'll see that the only situation where you have two recessive genes, there's one of them out of the 4. So probability is 1 in 4, or you could say 25%, or 0.25. This question is about malaria. The map shows areas of the world where humans are at high risk of malaria. The malaria spread by mosquitoes. Describe how. So first mark saying that mosquitoes suck infected blood or blood from someone with malaria. And then you can say that it passes the pathogen or the parasite into a new human or host. You can't say that malaria is transferred. You've got to use the word pathogen or protozoan or parasite or plasmodium. So any of those technical words. You could get 2 marks for saying that mosquitoes suck blood with plasmodium and pass on to another human. That'll get you 2 marks as well. In countries around the equator, pools of water are sprayed with insecticides to reduce the spread of malaria. Explain how this reduces the spread of malaria. So, first mark saying that mosquitoes breed in water, or mosquitoes lay their eggs in water, and the second mark saying that spraying insecticide kills mosquito or larvae or eggs or offspring. So those are where your 2 marks are. Malaria causes a fever. The body temperature is very high during a fever, and this may cause death. Describe how high body temperatures can cause death. Again, another 2 marks. So first mark saying heat stroke, or you could say hypothermia. You could say insufficient water to remove the toxins, and then the second mark saying dehydration. You could also say damage to enzymes, stops enzymes working, denatures enzymes. You could say prevents chemical reactions happening. Any of those will get you those 2 marks. You need 2 of them. Next question about diabetes. Says Jessica is an athlete, she has diabetes. Jessica can help control her blood sugar levels by controlling her diet. She must also inject herself with insulin every day. Write down one type of diabetes Jessica has and explain your answer. Also, which type, not one type, which type she has. So, the type is type 1, and the reason is that type 1 is insulin dependent, or it's on early onset, or it's juvenile. Or you can say that type 1 doesn't produce any or enough insulin, or you can say that type 2 can only be controlled with diet, or that type 2 is a late onset. So any of those, but you need to have both the type and the explanation to get the mark there. Jessica needs to change the amount of insulin she injects during each day. Jessica plans on a training run immediately after breakfast. Explain how this changes the amount of insulin she would need to inject. So, first mark saying that your insulin dose would need to be less, and that's because your second mark, because she would use up her blood sugar or glucose. But you need to make sure you say blood in that second mark, otherwise you don't get the mark. So this next question is a 6-mark question. Please can you mark this yourself using the mark scheme that can be found on the Blue Coat Science Google site. Ask your teacher to have a look at your marking after you've done it, but I'd like you to mark it first, please, using that mark scheme. This question is about phototropism. Look at the diagram. It shows the results obtained by Charles Darwin and his son in 1880. Their results led to the discovery of a group of plant hormones called auxins and their effect on plant growth. Explain how these results show where auxin is made. So, for 1 mark, you've got to say the auxin is made in the tip, and you've got to say because when the tip is covered, or when it's missing, there's no growth towards the light. So there's 1 mark for saying both those things. Auxin is made in the tip, because when the tip is covered or missing, there's no growth towards the light, or there's no bending towards the light. In 1913, Boysen-Jensen also investigated phototropism. The diagram shows his results. Explain how these results show how auxin moves. So it says the response with gelatin as gelatin allows diffusion, or you could say no response with mica as mica prevents diffusion, or you could say that diffusion as when diffusion is prevented it doesn't grow. So you need to say how the auxin moves during via diffusion, as when the fusion is prevented the plant doesn't grow. Explain what both sets of results show about the link between the distribution of auxin and cell elongation. So here, for this mark, you've got to get the idea across that there's more auxin on the shaded or the right-hand side, and that elongation is on the shaded or right-hand side. This question is about compounds containing carbon. Look at the displayed formulas of some compounds. What is the molecular formula of compound B? So you've got to count how many C's there are, and then put how many there are, and then count how many H's there are, and then put how many there are. So there are 6 on there. But you must make sure you draw your numbers correctly. You can't do this or this. Those would not get you the mark. You've got to put them lower at the bottom. You can also put H and C either way around. So you could have put H6C2 if you wanted to. Explain why compound B is a hydrocarbon but compound C is not a hydrocarbon. So there's 3 marks for this. This should be an easy 3 marks. So compound B is a hydrocarbon because it's only made of hydrogen and carbon. So that is worth a mark. And then, that's worth 2 marks for saying it's made of carbon and hydrogen for 1 mark and only for the second mark. And then C contains oxygen. That'll get you your 3rd mark. 2 compounds are unsaturated. Which 2? So an unsaturated compound has a double bond between carbon atoms. So it's not compound E because that's between carbon and oxygen. It's compound F and compound A. So they've put compound E in there to try and confuse you. This question is about emulsifiers and cooking. Mayonnaise is a mixture of an emulsifier and oil and water. The emulsifier helps to stop the oil and water from separating. Look at the structure of an emulsifier molecule. So you've just got to write in fill in the 2 key words there. So the head is hydrophilic, and the tail is hydrophobic. And then you've got to explain how that stops the oil and water from separating. So it's the idea that the hydrophobic tail is attracted to the oil and the hydrophilic head is attracted to water. Or you could say the hydrophobic tail or end bonds to oil, or the hydrophilic end and head bonds to water. So you've got the idea that one end, and choose the right end, bonds to water and one end bonds to the oil. Egg yolk is a runny liquid. The egg yolk becomes a solid when it's cooked. Explain why. Use ideas about the types of molecules in egg yolk. So you've got to talk about protein molecules from arc, and then say that they denature, or you could say that they permanently change shape, or there's an irreversible change of shape. But the word denature would be fine. A power station burns methane. write a balanced symbol equation with a complete combustion of methane. So you got CH4, during combustion it reacts with oxygen, and it will make, for complete combustion, CO2 and water. And then to balance the hydrogens first, so you've got 4 on this side, so you need to have 2 waters to have 4 overall on this side. You've already got the right number of carbons, you've got 1 there and 1 there. So number of oxygens, you've got 2 there and 2 for the waters. So that's 4 overall, so you need a big 2 in front of the oxygen. So 1 mark for the symbols and 1 mark for the balancing. The power station produces nitrogen dioxide gas. The owners need to stop nitrogen dioxide going into the atmosphere. They can choose 2 methods. So there's the 2 methods. Look at the table, it shows some information about each method. The power station is 100 kilometres from the coast. The power station makes 9,000 grams of nitrogen dioxide. Which method would be most suitable for removing nitrogen dioxide from the waste gases, and explain your answer. So you can choose either one as long as you have 2 reasons to back it up. So if you said seawater, your 2 reasons could be that it removes more of the pollutant, or you could say it does not form a waste product, or you could say it's cheaper, or you could say it's readily available because it's near the coast. And if you said limestone, you could say because it does not have to be pumped away from the sea, or you could say you need less mass of material. So either of those, you could choose seawater or limestone, but you had to make sure that you had 2 reasons for the one you chose. So if you went through each one, seawater gets rid of more nitrogen dioxide, and there's no waste made, and it's cheaper. But you could choose limestone because you don't need as much. Only a small amount is needed to remove the same amount of nitrogen dioxide. And you don't have to pump it from the sea, it can be mined. Polypropylene is a polymer made from propene. Look at the displayed formula of propene, draw the displayed formula. And this is quite a difficult one because of the way it's drawn here. But remember, all you've got to do is draw your 2 carbons where the double bond is, and then put a single bond there instead. Then draw 2 bonds either side, brackets, and an N. So there's your initial structure for any polymer you're going to draw. Then you've just got to draw what is on these 2 carbons. So you've got an H and an H on this first carbon. On this second carbon you've got an H, and you've got this. So you've got to draw that, but a bit smaller, underneath. If you put this at the top instead, that would be fine. Okay, this next question is the 6-mark question. So please can you mark that yourself using the mark scheme that's on the Google site, and then once you've marked it, you can ask your teacher to check it if you're not completely confident with it. An oil paint contains oil, a solvent, a binder, and a phosphorescent pigment. A phosphorescent pigment will glow in the dark. Explain why. So the reason is that it absorbs or takes in energy and then releases or emits the energy in the dark. So in the light it absorbs energy, that's 1 mark, and in the dark it releases or emits the energy. For the first mark you could also say that it stores energy from light in the day, and you can use the word light instead of energy if you want to. A layer of oil paint is left to dry and harden. The solvent evaporates. What happens to the oil? So the reason why it hardens is because it reacts with oxygen. That's your mark. Or you could say it is oxidized. UV light comes from the sun. UV light is also used in sunbeds. Many doctors are worried about the dangers to people who are exposed to UV light. Skin cancer has been linked to UV light. One type of skin cancer is called malignant melanoma. Look at the table about patients that have this cancer. It shows percentage of malignant melanomas found in each body area. Tara looks at the information. She suggests males have a higher percentage of malignant melanomas on their head and neck because on average males have a shorter hair than females. Explain how shorter hair may increase the risk of malignant melanomas. So there's only 1 mark for this. So it's the idea that there's more skin exposed to UV light, which causes the skin cancer. Or with short hair, less UV is absorbed or blocked, or there's greater exposure. So as long as you talked about UV light and there being more skin exposed to it, that you get the mark. Scientists are unsure whether exposure to the sun or sunbeds has the highest risk of causing skin cancers. Suggest how scientists could gather evidence to find out which has the highest risk. So any 2 of these points, you could say they could survey people, you could get a large sample size, you could talk about if you just put survey lots of people, that get you both marks, You could talk about fair testing and the comparison between a sunbed and the sun. You could suggest a suitable experiment, so expose people or animals, cells to a sunbed and compare with people or animals not exposed to sunbed. So any of two of those would get you those 2 marks. Pale and darker skins can both be affected by UV light. Darker skin reduce the risk of skin cancer. Explain why. So first mark saying they absorb UV, and then so darker skins absorb UV and therefore let less UV reach underlying tissue. You could also say that it contains more pigment or more melanin. Look at the table, it shows information for different skin types. There it is. If factor 10 sunscreen is used, which skin types will be safe for being in the sun for 5 hours? So that is skin types A and C. So you need both of those to get that mark. So the reason is that you can work out the recommended the time that would be safe by multiplying the factor by the time that the skin type can stay in normally. So this one would be 10, this one would be 4, this one's 7, and this one 2 hours. So C and A are both above 5 hours. Microwave ovens can be used to cook potatoes. Conventional ovens can also cook potatoes using infrared waves. Infrared waves crisp the skin of the potato, but the microwaves do not. Explain why. So first mark saying that infrared heats the surface or the skin only. And the second mark is saying that this causes the water to evaporate from the surface, making it crispy. First mark saying that it heats the surface, the skin. Second mark saying that causes the water to evaporate from the skin, making it crispy. The white microwave oven cooks the potato more quickly. Explain why. So any two from these, you could say that microwaves are only absorbed by water or fat. You could say that microwaves do not heat the container or the oven, or they don't pass through the plastic or glass plate. You could say that the microwaves penetrate the food further. So any of those two would get you those 2 marks. Some ovens combine microwave and infrared cooking. Look at information about a combination oven. The combination setting provides more energy per second. Suggests why the combination setting still takes 8 minutes to cook the potato. So first mark saying that infrared will not penetrate to the centre of the potato, or only crisps or heats the outside. And the second mark for saying so they need all the microwave heating. So 8 minutes of microwave heating, or all the cooking is done by the microwave. So this next question is the 6 mark question, and what I'd like to do is mark this yourself, as with the other ones, and ask your teacher to check it if you're unsure whether you've marked it correctly. Use the mark scheme on the Google site to mark it. Next question, electromagnetic waves have a range of wavelengths. Look at the list of electromagnetic waves, there they are. Complete the table, put the waves in order of increasing wavelength. 2 waves been done for you. So you get 2 marks for this, so you've got to put them in order. So you should have had gamma, then X-ray, then ultraviolet, then light or visible light, then infrared, and then microwave. So if you got them all right, then you get 2 marks, and if you only got the top 2 right, then it gets you 1 mark. Sorry, that's incorrect. If you got the top 2 right, that gets you a mark, and if you got the bottom 4 right, that also gets you a mark. So it's kind of split into 2 marks, that. But obviously if you've got them all right, you get both marks. So next, what is meant by the frequency of a wave? So this mark is for saying that it's the number of waves or oscillations or cycles in a second or in a unit of time. You've got to say in a second or unit of time. So a number of waves in a second would get you a mark. Instead of saying number of waves, you could say number of times a crest, trough, or peak, or waves passes a point each second. That would also be fine. But you can't say peaks and troughs. That would lose you the mark. That is incorrect. So last question worth 4 marks. Says infrared waves have different wavelengths. They have a range of wavelengths from that number to that number. The speed of infrared waves in a vacuum is this. To show that the frequency range of these waves is 4.04 times 10 to the 14 hertz. So this is quite straightforward 4 marks as long as you can use your equation table correctly. So remember that wave speed equals frequency times the wavelength. So you've got to work out the frequency for each one. So frequency equals wave speed divided by wavelength by rearranging that formula. So the first one is going to be frequency equals 3 times 10 to the 8 divided by 0.74 times 10 to the minus 6. Now if you're unsure how to type that into your calculator, please ask your teacher to show you, because it's really important you can do that for the exam. That equals 4.05 times 10 to the 14. If you wrote it as just a big number, that's also fine. And then the other frequency equals 3 times 10 to the 8 again, divided by 300 times 10 to the minus 6. And that equals 0.01 times 10 to the minus 14. But you could also write 1 times 10 to the minus 16 as well. And then you just multiply, you take one away from the other to work out the difference. So it's 4.05 times 10 to the 14, take away 0.01 times 10 to the minus 14. So they're both minus 14, aren't they? Oh no, this one, I do apologise, this one is 14. It's not minus 14. And so is this one. And that equals 4.04 times 10 to the 14. So there's your difference. Add up your marks and jot them on your poster. And now try starting the Unit 2 papers if you haven't already.